dance on strings unseen. My collection grows, and I smile.
I shall cast you into a pit of infinite torches.
And to fight is to exist. Resist the assault.
Hello and welcome, Exiles, to my Explode RF Elementalist. As you know, this league, Righteous Fire, got a pretty significant change to how it worked. It went from a skill that had a lot of base damage per level with a combination of scaling based on your life pool to essentially having the scaling based on your life pool get doubled and the flat portion dropped. So this is where you pivot from being somebody who needs to scale a bunch of flat levels to how can we get a high life pool, a high ES pool, a high combination of both, or the alt version of it, the Arcane Righteous Fire, how can I get a high mana pool and work around that? Now, this is what I would call the fun way to do Righteous Fire. Righteous Fire Explode. A while back, I set this up, I think in like Harvest League as a Chieftain was the first time I did it, or maybe before that, I'm not sure. It was a while back, had a lot of fun with it, but now currently I think the best way to do it is probably Elementalist for going for RF Explode. Maybe there could be an argument for putting it into Gagarf potentially because Gagarf can do it quite well, but I decided to do Elementalist with the new Warlock sub ascendancy because, as you know, we get a lot of base damage based on life pool. So for example, we're a 15,000 life pool character, and when we get 70% of that, that's roughly around, I don't know, 10,000 base damage per second. Even though it's a level 20 gem, we don't have a lot of level scaling here. It still is a lot of damage per second, and we get a lot of life through Crimson Power by having basically a lot of ES on our gear. So you'll notice on our Val Regalia, on our helmet, on our gloves, and on our shield, there's a lot of flat ES here, and that gets converted into flat life, and that's how we're able to hit such a high life number, even though we don't have particularly OP life scaling by being like a crazy strength stacker or something. 15,000 is still pretty good, and that's without doing something like a Dissolution, which is like a 30% more multiplier. You can't do Dissolution with Righteous Fire because it disables your way, like Righteous Fire would just keep draining your reservation down. It doesn't work. If you self-damage, it doesn't work with Dissolution, but so that's why we couldn't do that. But we have some things that work quite well for sustain. My approach here, this is not a cheap approach. This is what I would call I think this is roughly like 500 to 600 divines in the current league. This setup here between our mage blood and our crafted gear, I think this is something where if you have a decent amount of money to spend, this is a fun character to play, but it's not like particularly OP in terms of like extremely cheap. This is a decent amount of investment. We have things like Defiance of Destiny, which pairs greatly with having a nice life pool, and you combine that with some good sustain. We have about roughly almost 4k per second on our 15k life pool, which that's not all net sustain. We do have a Ruby Flask. We do have a decent max res. We have about 85 max fire res, but it is pretty good for sustaining us in most contexts here. I'll probably do a showcase of an Uber Exarch just to give you an idea of the defensive capabilities. We'll probably die maybe once or twice. I hope we don't die more than that. We'll see though. We'll have to see how well Defiance of Destiny does for us on a high life character, because this character mostly is just a high HP pool combined with that Defiance of Destiny. It doesn't have a lot of defensive layers on top of that per se. Well, I guess technically we do have Lucky Suppress at 69. So we actually do have 90% Suppress roughly. So maybe it's a little bit better, but you get the idea. Anyways, the whole way we scaled this character, I wanted to do with an Adorned setup. I think it's the best new jewel in the game. If I can find where I have it somewhere in my character. Adorned, I didn't do a 150 roll, even though I have that one. I wanted to showcase a bit less expensive. 138 I think cost me about 65 divine, so it was still pretty expensive, and that's how part of the way we got to that 500 divine budget. But the way with Adorned, the approach is you essentially just get magic jewels and you corrupt them. You go for life and burn damage, or you go for life and fire dot multi. And the reason we went for a 138 specifically is that's the breakpoint when you go, instead of having, for example, 18 fire dot multi, you get 19. It's that breakpoint, the breakpoint for fire dot multi to give you 19. Essentially, if you wanted to go to the next breakpoint, it'd be 143 to have 17% life, and then 150 would get you to 20 fire dot multi. So the thing is, a 65 divine jewel is only a few percentage points worse than the one jewel that cost a mirror. Of course, you're min-maxing, you want the mirror jewel, but for our purposes of having just a fun Righteous Fire character play, it's plenty fine. All right, now, as for that, as far as Explode RF goes, it's pretty simple. Explode RF is all about having a few things. You need Ignite Prolith, you need 100% chance to ignite, and you need the thing you're exploding with to ignite. Because we're a Righteous Fire character, we scale a lot of burn damage, we scale a lot of fire dot multi, we need to make sure the explosion is an ignite, so that way the damage is being scaled. And the way we do that is through Elementalist having the all damage ignite node, Shaper of Flames. This also gives us 100% chance to ignite. The thing is, you could get around this. You could get 100% chance to ignite and then all damage ignite from the new That Which Was Taken jewel. That would allow you to do some other ascendancies decently. The reason I chose Elementalist, though, is because on top of this Ignite node, we get a lot of other damage scaling and AoE. For example, Hard Destruction, massive AoE, just feels good while clearing, and then when we go to do boss damage, it's giving us 30% more damage for about 4 seconds, which is a nice window to pop our Val RF to just erase a boss. On top of that, we have Mastermind of Discord, which means our exposure is quite nice, another minus 25, and then on top of that, we have Shaper of Storms. Now, a fun little thing here, which I'm not quite sure is a bug or not a bug, but actually, this Shaper of Storms node, the 15 min shock, can actually be raised with another source of minimum shock, That Which Was Taken. Personally, when I read this, I thought it was just going to be like, okay, it's either 10 minimum or 15 minimum, but they're actually additive. So our shock between this and Shaper of Storms gives us a 25 minimum shock. Combine that with a Shock Nova, which has Unbound ailments on it, as well as the 10% extra shock effect from this node here, we actually inflict like a 56% shock. I don't know if I hovered over Baron on the initial clip, but I'll hover over it when we're doing Exarch. You'll see a 56% shock, which is kind of crazy considering we have, like, we're dealing no lightning damage and we're getting that massive shock, which is why this node is such a high damage dealer, such a high damage multiplier for an Elementalist and a Righteous Fire build. On top of that, we also have Combustion being inflicted. Since all damage can ignite, we can link that to the Shock Nova, and we get the minus 10 res on top of the nice shock, and it feels pretty dang good. The only way to like min-max this a little bit more would be potentially to have like Wave of Conviction for exposure, but right now I just have a Master of Fire. Nearby enemies have fire exposure just because I wanted to be a little bit lazy and not have to worry about thinking about inflicting exposure. It's only a 10 exposure. You can get up to 25 with a Scorching Ray. So this is a little bit lower on min-maxing the damage, but it felt good for mapping, and it's plenty fine in terms of being enough damage for most bosses. On top of that, you'll notice we have a lot of Cluster Jewels. All these larges are basically all Burning Bright for AoE, and then Sadist, because we inflict a shock and ignite whenever we do Shock Nova. That's 45% damage. And then if I did set up some sort of minimum shock, or if I think if I Frostblink the Chilled Ground will chill, potentially we could get the chill damage as well, I think, but I'm not 100% sure. So that's the idea for the setup of the character. As for dealing with ailments, we are chill immune from Wrapped in Flames. We are freeze immune from our boot mod. And then we are running, I believe, Tempest Shield. No, I'm not running Tempest Shield. I thought I was running Tempest Shield. Okay, well, I should probably be running Tempest Shield for Shock Immune. I might not be Shock Immune, which is kind of a misplay. I am actually currently running Herald of Ash, which doesn't really do anything for the character, but make the explosions prettier. I don't think it helps the chain explode. We chain explode without this, so this is mainly just for aesthetics. So you could swap this out for a Tempest Shield, which would be good defensively, or you could do something like Vitality here, and then you'll notice in my tree here, I have spec Life Reservation. I don't actually need these points. I was just specking those because of the fact I wanted to have Herald of Ash in the build. So like if you're doing bosses, you could go for more of this life spec and do a bit more damage, but you wouldn't have the pretty explosions when you kill enemies. All right, that should cover most of the idea behind this character. It's just a bunch of magic jewels with life and dot multi and burn damage and life. That's pretty much it. That which is taken with the 10% minimum shock, a bit of life regenerate. And yeah, that covers most of the character. We have a little bit of suppress via having it crafted on our chest piece, shield, and boots, along with a lucky suppress. That gets us about 90 suppress. Feels pretty dang good. This is mainly what I'd recommend. If you wanted to play a Righteous Fire that just should feel pretty good, feel pretty tankly. We've only died, I believe, 3 times. That was to... Oh, I think I died a couple times. I've done a few Ubers, so I think I died like once in Shaper to a Slam, and maybe once in Eater, maybe. I'm not sure. I did a couple Ubers. I think I died once or twice, basically. Anyways, besides the point, I'm going to showcase you guys an Exarch real quick. But this is what I would say if you have a decent amount of budget, like 300, 400, 500 divines, this sort of Righteous Fire would feel very good in the current game. Very feels good mapper, Defiance of Destiny, until you get hit by some really big damage, no, it feels smooth. I didn't try it till now, and I'm glad I'm trying it now. One of the great things about not needing gem levels means you can use the amulet like Defiance of Destiny, or I could have gone something for like Eternal Damnation, depending on which way you want to go. Defiance of Destiny, I think, is kind of winning me over. It's very, very feels good. All right, let's do this Exarch. I'm going to shock him. I have a trigger for my dual curse, elemental weakness, and flammability. You'll notice those get triggered on our curse. Sometimes if we're fighting an enemy, and you'll see if I hover over the shock, it's a 56% shock, like I was saying. Sometimes if we're mapping and we've been using a lot of our skills to like jump around and whatnot, the oh, this is kind of a waste. I shouldn't have done Val Righteous Fire. Yeah, that's kind of stupid. But I was gonna say, am I actually tanky enough for this? Does Defiance of Destiny actually work in this situation? I guess Defiance of Destiny works pretty well for the ball phase here. We have a high enough life pool and decent max res that I guess it does work out. I was kind of wondering if it would be good enough for this. Defiance of Destiny essentially is like, if you're not taking enough damage to die, you're gonna feel pretty dang good with it, I think, at least. Okay, we'll do our Val Righteous Fire here, get some more damage in. Obviously, we don't have like the highest single target. It is Righteous Fire. This gets a lot higher if you go for something like Gigarf, where you have like that insane ES pool and you actually hit Doc Cap on that sort of character. But for a character that has Explode RF and is just kind of like fun to map with, I am quite happy with how this character has turned out ultimately. I am kind of worried about the Minotaur Slam. He might hit high enough physical damage that he could actually one-shot us. That's a maybe. I'm not 100% sure. I know for sure we did die to a Shaper Slam, which we're on the precipice of being able to tank, but not quite. Generally, a Fizz Slam without any mitigation from Uber Shaper is, from my experience, something like... should probably duck out of this. Something like... I want to say it's in the range of like 14,000 to 20,000 Fizz damage, roughly, is how much it does. We have about 9k with Petrified Blood, which puts us right in the range of like maybe if he low rolls, we tank it type of thing. But from the one slam I tested, I didn't take it, so I was kind of sad about that. Regardless, in most mapping scenarios, this level of life, this level of recovery, Defiance of Destiny, is going to feel very, very good. And it doesn't get really bad or failed state until you do the more dangerous attacks like this stuff. Can I take Annihilation? Yeah. There's a lot of the attacks that are more like shotgunny. Defiance of Destiny just completely takes care of, which is pretty dang cool. Yeah, okay. I know why that happened. It's because I have my reason. It's because right when he did that, I didn't react very fast to it, but I was standing on the rune, and I'm pretty sure those runes disable recovery. I'm not like 1000% sure, but I'm pretty sure if you're standing on the these like runes on the floor, they disable recovery. I'm gonna take it this time. Trust. Yeah. See, it works fine, but we were on that rune, which disabled my recovery and degened me. Okay, I have a very good excuse for why I died to that Annihilation. Okay, and it checks out. It checks out just fine. Anyways, that is an Uber Exarch. It obviously isn't like Omega high DPS. It's much more a mapper, but it is a character I love to play. I love Righteous Fire, and I wanted to showcase a live setup with an Elementalist with the new Warlock. I think this is not necessarily anywhere close to as strong as you can get with Righteous Fire. I think the Gigarf Ivory Tower Scion setup is much stronger, but this is a just feels good mapper angle. Like if you just want to have some little bit of chain explode, this is a way to do it. Anyways, this is my Righteous Fire Elementalist I wanted to work on and show you. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Maybe we'll do a few more Righteous Fire builds throughout the league. I have some other ideas I potentially want to try. We'll see if I get around to them. Anyways, as always, thanks for watching, Exiles. Take care and peace out.